I would like to officially introduce the launch of True Stories 6. At the Narrative Project, our commitment is to help people with stories that are burning in their hearts, to get those stories out of their bodies and onto the page. But furthermore, our goal is to move everyone through the stages from writer to published author. And while a lot of the authors here today in this volume are still in the process of getting their full books ready for publication, they can all call themselves authors at this point because they've published in this anthology. So this is a really big deal for our readers here today. Getting even a short piece ready for publication is not a small task. It certainly requires epic endurance and submission of their pieces, revision of their pieces. I just want to first of all give a shout out to my amazing co-editor, Dana Tyrally. She revised in some cases and proofread these pieces over and over again. So big shout out to Dana for all of the work that she did on this anthology. And I really appreciate all the work that she does. So what we say in the Narrative Project is that writers don't let writers write alone. I want to make sure to thank a handful of people. So I really want to thank our coaches, Nancy Canyon, Ani Kamola, Colleen Haggerty, Rebecca Mabangla-Mayor, Jeannie Rodden, Dana Tyrally, as mentioned, Wendy Welch, Amanda Stebert, Devin Fredrickson, Sabina Slowly, Betsy Graziani Fassbinder, and I really want to give a special shout out to the late Laurel Lee, who was always in support of our organization and of our writers. She just endlessly supported our work, and we miss her, and we are so grateful for her presence in our lives. I also really want to thank and just bow down to our patient and enthusiastic publisher, Lisa Daly at Sidekick Press, who is my business partner in our other company, Wayfaring Writers, and who I could basically not even do anything in my life without. So I absolutely adore Lisa, and we are all in deep gratitude for her work on this anthology. So without further ado, I want to jump in and invite our readers to read a piece from each of their chapters in the anthology. So we're going to be going alphabetical, opposite of alphabetical by first name. So we're going to start with Vanessa Gladden. Vanessa, I'd like to welcome Vanessa to the screen, and she's going to be reading from her piece, Dance of Disruption. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you, Cami. I'm reading an excerpt from my story about my divorce journey and my experience at a women's retreat to heal from spiritual trauma. I enter the retreat center, a small circular wooden building the size of a single classroom, surrounded by tall windows and a circular skylight on the ceiling. Wind and rain pelts the windows, but all is still and quiet within this protected container. As each female participant enters, she selects a pillow or blanket from a pile near the door and sits on the floor to form a circle. We sit on our pillows, hands on our chests, focusing inward. Just as I've become comfortable in our circle, the facilitator says, "Pick up your pillows and space yourselves around the room." Oh no, I think. Here comes the dancing. I choose a spot against the wall close to the door, less likely to be seen and also close to an escape. 20 of us are spaced around the room, about 3 to 5 feet between us. The music starts. I close my eyes and sway from side to side. My feet stay planted. This instinctual swaying reminds me of labor. As I sway in the dance circle, I ask myself, what am I birthing? I feel an innate urge to dance and trust my body to know what to do without my mind giving input. But my feet stay planted. The soft, slow music starts to surge to a faster beat, but I continue my low, rhythmic swaying. I open my eyes and glance around at the other women. One woman is sashaying around the room, swinging her arms wide. Another woman is on all fours, lifting her limbs and gyrating her hips like a wild animal. One has her arms wrapped around herself in an embrace, dancing with herself like a partner would. These women seem uninhibited and confident. I long to feel that free, but my thoughts hold me back, each thought a heavy brick wedging me in place. My body isn't for me. I look stupid. Being free in my body isn't who I am. I'm incapable of following my desire. So I conform to my lifelong strategy of blending in by sticking to the edges of the room, trying not to be seen. But it's not an option to stand still and not participate. That would be its own form of sticking out. I close my eyes again, feel my own heartbeat, and open my arms wide, reaching out sideways as far as I can, then reaching up as tall as I can, as far as I can. I slowly expand my space. My legs are twitching, itching to carry me forward. I open my eyes again, spotting a path for crossing the room without disturbing anyone. I take a large step in that direction, and then another and another, each one faster and lighter than the last. The music stops, and I feel lighter, like I'm floating. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Loved that. And I'm excited for the next reader, Tom Perez, who's going to be reading from his piece entitled Size Matters. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Cami. In early September 2020, I was 5 days into a 1,000-mile bicycle ride between Portland, Oregon and Helena, Montana, to raise money to combat sex trafficking while celebrating my 60th birthday. The sky was cloudless and the air was sweltering. Justin, my younger, smaller, skinnier, and faster friend who'd been riding with me for the first few days, turned back halfway through the day to join his wife for their anniversary celebration. The temperature hovered around 100 degrees when we parted. As the heat increased, conditions worsened along with my mood. My big old body was hurting. Compounding the burden of pedaling the next 700 miles alone, enormous tandem grain trucks rumbled right beside me, seeming to take over the entire road. By late afternoon, the heat and fatigue and road-hogging semis had their way with me as I rolled into Pomeroy, Washington, where I'd be staying at the home of my friends, Mary and Ray. They were away while their house was being renovated, and I was thrilled to be able to take a shower after my hot, sweaty ride. But the process wasn't as simple as you might expect. The shower stall in my friend's 100-year-old farmhouse was too short for me to stand upright, too narrow for my entire body to fit inside, and the shower head sprayed water squarely at my chest. I had just pedaled 10 hours in extreme heat, and any excessive contorting was likely to trigger shoulder, back, or leg cramps. So I struggled slowly and awkwardly to get clean. In hindsight, a cold water shower under the garden hose in the backyard made more sense, but that thought never occurred to me as I thrashed about instead in the tiny shower stall like a big, drunk, naked guy doing Tai Chi. The message from my shower stall experience was clear. Being big is overrated, and yet the man world will tell you otherwise. From the time we're young, boys are conditioned to value size. Big boys are the apex predators of the lunchroom, the playground, the locker room, and the boardroom. And if you've got a problem with this, tough. Suck it up, buttercup, because big boys don't cry. Is it any wonder we grew up convinced that size matters? For men, physical size creates a kind of privilege that even those of average stature admire. But being big is also a liability. A case in point, 6 months prior to my trip, I'd begun a small home repair project. I was demolishing and replacing a rotting deck. Naturally, being the big American man that I am, simply replacing the old deck wasn't enough. The new one would become a 300 square foot addition, giving new meaning to the phrase go big or go home. A ton or more of material for the job got delivered to my driveway, meaning I'd have to haul 20-foot beams, dozens of plywood sheets, and hundreds of pounds of concrete by hand to the backyard. Naturally, because I'm big and dumb, I hauled it all myself. The effort tore my right rotator cuff and a bicep muscle in my right shoulder. Months later, the nonstop pain of that injury and the discomfort from the day's 70-mile ride made me wonder if getting a night's sleep on Ray and Mary's floor was even possible. I dried off from my awkward shower, heated up a bowl of freeze-dried spaghetti with my camp stove, and ate dinner on the back porch because the house was still without appliances or a table. I blew up my air mattress, unrolled my sleeping bag on the hardwood floor in the dining room, and tried to settle in. but soon I was writhing in pain, feeling oddly small and 300 miles away from anyone who remotely cared about me or my circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom, leaving us wanting more. And by the way, friends, if you do want to grab a copy of this anthology, Amanda will pop some links in the chat for you so that you know where to grab the full anthology. Be Tamra Selman, and she'll be reading from her piece, Outer Limits. Welcome, Tamra.
Hi, Cami. Thank you so much for hosting this reading. Just a little bit of context. I am a solo female hiker, and this is one such encounter that I'm telling a story about. It wasn't long, maybe half a mile in, when I felt as if I were being watched. There was nothing obvious to confirm my intuition. Before me stretched the trail which passed by stands of rhododendron and spent foxglove, a random boulder, and a mossy nurse log, breaking the monotony, but there were no signs of company, not even birds. I was assailed with a sudden desire to turn around and go back to the SUV. Logically, there was no good reason for it except that my legs were tight and my breathing a little too labored. I chuckled, suspecting I might be inclined to bail for being in less than ideal hiking form. Maybe Tunnel Creek Trail was too challenging for a stay-at-home mother just shy of 40 who should probably admit to her limitations. Still, I felt it in my solar plexus, the need to flee. At first, my pace downhill was normal, steady, lungs and legs relieved by the easy angle of descent. I coordinated, astride using the walking stick. Still, a stronger, more compelling vibe coaxed me almost to a gallop. But I couldn't go that fast, not on such a steep decline. Even if I couldn't see what was tracking me, I remembered the advice on the trailhead sign. In the presence of a cougar, do not run. A fleeing human is an invitation to a mauling. I managed a controlled fast walk instead, keeping my breath steady, timed to the heaviness of my footfalls, hyper aware of the fragrance of the needled loam underfoot, the sudden loud bubbling of the faraway creek. New clouds overhead obscured the sun, filtering color and light, the temperature quickly dropping. I didn't feel safe again until I was inside the SUV. I sat sweating through my clothes, muscles twitching, hands shaking as I drank my water. Just as I turned the engine over to leave, the clouds opened to crepuscular rays reaching the canopy. In that moment, I noticed movement in the small stand of immature vine maples next to the trailhead sign, a black-tipped tail twitching. Then the cougar came into full view, the length of her lithe, muscular body motionless in the open space, aglow in the eerie light. Her stare skewered me, green golden eyes perfectly outlined in black. I noticed her oddly serene expression as she paused a few more seconds, then sauntered back into the bush. And then I felt inexplicably calm. Thank you.
Well, I guess we know she got out okay, but you should read the piece to find out for sure the rest of the story. Our next reader is going to be Susan Smith Gippen, and she'll be reading from Dying the Way You Did. Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Cami. This is part of a chapter in my book that explores the unexpected effect the sudden death of my first husband, years after divorcing, had on my writing ambitions. Dying the way you did, there was never any chance to reminisce, to laugh at our younger selves, getting married like a couple of barefoot hippies. The college town duplex we shared as newlyweds with one of your college buddies to save rent. You campaigning for a seat in the Iowa legislature in the small towns outside Ames that fall, seeking votes by knocking on doors and handing out your own Democratic blue political brochures. Me, after work as a reporter for our local paper, kicking off my low heels and cooking dinner, some sort of hamburger helper that quickly bored us three. I ate hours before you guys showed up. After finishing your warmed over dinners, all three of us moved from our tiny kitchen to our living room, settling in to relax and to laugh over your entertaining updates from the campaign trail. Dying the way you did, there was no chance to chuckle about that one day that stood out above all others from your daily routine of dropping campaign literature at doors. How you'd found yourself on a front porch knocking on an old wooden front door. Through the closed door, you heard the feeble sounding voice of an older voter. You mimicked the voice. Hello, come in. Hello, come in. The voice encouraged. You politely obliged, twisting the knob on the unlocked door, then slowly opening the door and stepping inside. You took a few more steps inside the stranger's house, then you shouted through the empty rooms in your masculine voice. Hello? Anyone here? You asked. After a few moments, a response came. Hello, come in. Hello, come in. Quickly, you realized no one was home. You had trespassed. It was a mynah bird in a cage, you told us. A talking bird invited me inside. Dying the way you did, there was no chance years later to and hear them gasp at the end, as I had all those years ago. Thank you.
Next reader is Rebecca Mabangla Mayor, and she is reading from her piece, which is entitled Between Light and Shade.
Thank you, Cami. This excerpt is from my memoir in progress, Memories of a Catholic Girlhood. I am grateful to the Lemhi Nation for the generosity toward me, a settler in their territory. The bus hummed to a stop somewhere between Ala Moana Mall and the University of Hawaii Manoa. Bright sunshine eased through gaps between the skyscrapers, a typical cloudless sky above. Leah's hands folded over each other across the buckle of her car seat, eyes tracking the shifts of shade and light from the nearby window. We sat on a bench near the front of the bus to take advantage of the extra space, and as the driver pulled away from the curb into traffic, a woman dressed in a bright yellow and red muumuu settled in the seat perpendicular to mine. At first, she settled back into her seat, but spotting Leah, she leaned forward to regard my 3-month-old baby. Kawaii, cooed the woman. So cute. Thank you, I replied. She shook gold bangles, and the sound delighted Leah, who watched the glittering show. Such big eyes, she said. Such beautiful skin, so pale. You are her nanny, hey? I blinked and shook my head. The woman looked down at Leah again, her eyes narrowing in apparent confusion. I'm sorry, I said. I don't understand. She looked up and spoke slowly, assuming that I didn't understand English very well. You? Nanny for Keiki? For the baby, hey? I looked at my hands, then Leah's hands, so many shades paler than mine. She felt so separate from me. How could a mother look so different from her firstborn? My husband's ancestors came from areas in the UK and Europe, while mine were from the Philippines. No, I said finally, I'm not her nanny. She's mine. The woman looked at me, surprise furrowing her brow. She looked down at Leah once more. Ha, she grunted. So pale. Hapa, hey? Hapa, half. Half me, half my husband. Yet somehow I disappeared since there was no trace of my darkness on Leah's skin to be seen. How could I reconcile this gap between us that was so easy for others to see, but one that seemed too vast for me? What guidance could a dark-skinned woman give a light-skinned child like her? I had to admit the woman was right. Leah was Hapa. I nodded finally. Kawaii, she said. So cute, Hapa. She nodded, satisfied somehow in knowing a secret I did not know myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Love your story. Our next reader is Randy Sundell, and Randy will be reading from To Wed or Not to Wed. Randy, welcome. Randy, unmute yourself if you have not unmuted yourself. Let me find you in here. Perhaps yep, there you are. Hold on one second.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I've got you. We don't.
Okay, thank you.
We can't see you.
You can't see me.
We can't see you. Hold on, everyone. There you are. There's your beautiful face.
Wonderful. Thank you for your patience, Cami. It is June 1974. Sitting across from my blind date on a weeknight in an Italian restaurant near Grand Central Station, I picked at my chicken marsala and mashed potatoes, feeling more hypnotized than hungry. Along with the piped-in sounds of Carole King singing about the earth moving under her feet, my 25-year-old toes were tingling over this handsome 6-foot-tall man. Yeah, Carol, I thought, I feel it too. Bob's beautiful smile more than offset his receding brown hairline. Did you always want to have a printing brokerage business, I asked. No, I planned to be a dentist like my dad. What changed your mind? My grades, Bob replied with a devilish wink. Enough about me, Randy. When did you know you wanted to be a singer? I loved singing from the time I could speak. Mom says my first audience was passengers on city buses when I was 3. To her chagrin, my musical invitation to fellow riders was, "Come on in my house." Bob guffawed. Tell me more. I glanced at my watch. It was 10 o'clock. Next time, I said. Dinner was done, but my evening was nowhere near over. I had to catch a train back to Long Island, pick up my parents' car, and drive to my childhood home where I was staying in between out-of-town gigs. Though savoring Bob's company, I didn't relish sneaking into my Barbie-colored bedroom after midnight like I did while in high school. To my surprise, Bob called me a cab and jumped inside with me. He told the driver to take us to the Long Island Railroad, the opposite direction from Bob's Upper East Side apartment. Peering out the taxi's back window, we had a front row seat to the city that never sleeps, the vibrant neon light show of Broadway theater marquees and lively restaurants open late. When the cab dropped us off at the station entrance, Bob took the escalator down with me to the train level. Waiting by my side on the sparsely inhabited platform, Bob stayed until my train arrived. He's so attentive and protective of me, I thought. I could get used to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Randy. You will all have to get the anthology to find out what happens. By the way, I just want to apologize for the interruptions that have happened in the sound. Amanda's doing a really good job of making sure that we keep people on mute. Great. Our next reader is Michaela von Schweinitz.
Thank you, Cami. It's the summer of 1978, and 19 years old Leo is vacationing in Spain with her 2 friends when their car gets stolen. This scene takes place on the morning after the police found the car. How did they find it? I'm curious about the speedy recovery of the car. Did they arrest the thieves? No arrests. They picked it up at 4 o'clock in the morning, abandoned at an intersection with both doors wide open. Wolf pays for his coffee with a couple of coins and takes a sip. There's something else you probably haven't heard yet. He takes a deep breath. There has been a huge explosion down the coast, 50 miles from here. I knew it. I saw the headline. What happened? A truck loaded with gas drove into a campground and it exploded. Half the campground burned down. Hundreds of people died. The facts hit hard. I want to rest my head on his shoulder. He sits too far away. Just imagine, I say, we could have been in that campground. For a moment, none of us says anything, but I think how fortunate that fate intervened and stopped us from traveling further south. You better call your parents, Wolf says. And tell them what? That the tent was stolen, but at least we got your car back? You tell them that you weren't in that campground, that you're alive. I'm ashamed. I hadn't thought of this. Are you calling home? There's nobody at my home, but your parents might worry. You should call them. Of course, my parents read the newspaper. Of course, my mom would wonder whether we were in that campground. Wolf is right. Okay, I'll tell them. But you two have to decide what to do next. Do we keep going? I leave them to discuss our next move without me, hoping that Wolf can convince Bridget not to drive back home. I know he wants to keep going because he has nobody at home to go back to. I look around, but I don't see a phone booth. I settle for buying a stamped postcard depicting Plaza Real and make sure to write today's date in clear print. I scrawl greetings to my parents in my usual sloppy handwriting, then drop the postcard in a mailbox. I have fulfilled my obligation as a dutiful daughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. That was a reading from Michaela's story called Calling Home, an excerpt from her forthcoming novel entitled Driving Lessons. So just to let you all know what that was. And next we have Meridian Christie. Meridian's going to be reading from her piece entitled Once Upon a Time. Welcome, Meridian.
Thank you, Cami. I thought I was living my happy ending, the life I had dreamed into being, having paid my dues. GB and I were planning a Mediterranean cruise with friends. 2 weeks before, we were scheduled to leave. He wasn't feeling great. For weeks, he hadn't looked well, often pale, his soft, sleepy brown eyes lacking luster. The day the ship sailed, GB had surgery to remove a tumor diagnosed as 4th-stage colon cancer. I was shattered. He was reassuring. That night in the hospital, he told me to look in his closet on the top shelf when I got home. There, he had hidden my birthday present, a pair of small diamond earrings and Anita Baker's Giving You the Best That I Got cassette tape, not the happy birthday he had planned. My anguish was familiar territory. 10 years earlier, my previous husband had died of lung cancer at 36. I knew well enough to appreciate our time together as cancer once again threatened to steal a life I cherished. GB and I didn't share any particular faith or religion, but we were sorting out our spiritual beliefs and creating traditions together as the years passed. We believed in the purposeful nature of life, the generosity of being kind and helpful to others, and that music will take you where nothing else will. We weren't worried about heaven or hell. Most Sundays as we were getting the day started, GB would say, "You ready for your Sunday morning uplift?" With that, he'd put on Aretha's Amazing Grace album. Grief. Grief lives alongside a calendar that once tracked fun with friends, visits, adventures, and vacations. It slips in between commitments and promises, plans and ideas, sandwiched by shoulds and must-dos. Grief ends up in the suitcase, pulls up a chair at the dinner table, arrives in the mail, and drains away thoughts and energy. Grief uproots faith and challenges the best intentions of the day. Grief watches children become adults. Grief smiles through tears, languishes on beaches, and rattles the ice at the bottom of my drink. Grief suns itself lazily alongside my body. Grief sets the table and dances alone in the kitchen. Grief remembers the name of my beloved, his laughter and love, counsel and companionship. Grief ambushes the moment when I sense my breath, call for the strength of my spirit, or feel the heat and heartbeat of my body. Grief rambles gently, then withers in moments when joy expands for no good reason. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Meridian.
Thank you.
Beautiful description of grief. Our next reader is Mary Jo Campbell, and Mary Jo is going to be reading from her piece entitled My Elvis Story. Welcome, Mary Jo.
Hi. Is my video on?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Okay. This takes place in December 1976, and my boyfriend Michael kept his promise. One of my biggest dreams since I was 11 years old was about to come true in the largest showroom in the world, in the Las Vegas Hilton. I was about to see Elvis live for the first time. On the elevator to the lobby, I thought, oh my God, I'm breathing the same air as Elvis. I took in another deep breath. Then a beep sounded announcing it was time to leave the elevator. My heart pounded with excitement. The powerful Space Odyssey theme boomed throughout the showroom. It was Elvis's entrance music. The drums and the trumpets blasted until there he was. Elvis stepped on stage amid flashing lights, screams, and enthusiastic applause. My jaw dropped when I first saw him. He was ridiculously good looking. My eyes began filling with tears. He oozed sexuality, pacing back and forth across the stage like a sleek cat, soaking up the adoration before launching into the driving beat of CC Rider blues. The audience was ecstatic. My God, he was gorgeous, the best looking man I'd ever seen. Dressed all in white, wearing one of his signature jumpsuits fitted with gold bedazzlements, he appeared larger than life. With his gorgeous jet black hair and sideburns and that voice. Hurt is the song I remember most from that night. Elvis's operatic voice was big, powerful, and passionate, oozing charisma. His voice filled every part of the room when he bellowed out the opening line of the song. I felt I should crouch underneath the table because of the force of it, but I didn't dare. I couldn't take my eyes off him. He was magic. I knew that the show was ending when I Can't Help Falling in Love began. Women in the audience started making their way towards the stage. Michael turned to me and mouthed over the screaming, "Go on, get up there." "What do you mean?" I yelled back. "Stand up, this is your moment. Start walking towards the stage," he insisted. In that instant, so many things raced through my mind. Trust him, I thought, trust Michael. So I headed towards the stage, and suddenly I found myself standing on the stage right next to Elvis. Oh my God. He was right in front of me. I could reach out and touch him. With tears flowing, my heart pounded out of my chest. Then he turned to me, right at me, looking straight into my eyes. With his big, beautiful blue eyes looking straight into mine, he flashed his famous, fabulous smile, and he melted my heart. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Mary Jo. Our next reader is going to be Malin Avra, and she will be reading from In Good Hands. Malin, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Cami. In late January 1993, I took a road trip to visit my friend Kim in Ashland, Oregon. Kim spent a lot of time at the community college ceramic studio. It smelled earthy. I inhaled the loamy scent. I watched her hands gracefully mold terracotta-colored clay spinning on a potter's wheel into a sleek 12-inch vase. I was mesmerized. Seeing my interest, she set a bowl of water and a sponge next to another wheel and centered a half-pound lump of clay upon it. I sat down, my hands sinking into the clay, and listened to her explain each step. But the clay had a mind of its own. The sides of my 3-by-3-inch bowl were warped like an old lumpy mattress. We had a good laugh. Still, I felt connected to the clay. I returned home and signed up for a throwing on the wheel class and felt connected to Kim when my hands wrapped around the clay. In May, I called Kim. Her roommate answered. When I asked to speak with her, there was a silence for what seemed like minutes. And then he told me Kim had died over the weekend. How? I asked. Overdose. I couldn't speak. His words had knocked the breath out of me. I clutched the receiver to my chest, collapsed on my bed, and wailed. 2 weeks after Kim's death, she came to me in a dream. Her wavy hair framed her face. She wore a light blue dress, and her skin was radiant. She stretched her arms toward me. Her hands loomed large, like they could hold all my grief. A few weeks later, I signed up for a clay hand-building class at the community center where pottery lined the shelves. As a final project, I made a mask of Kim. Rolling out a slab of clay and pressing my fingertips into it, I could feel Kim's presence, her hands guiding mine. I placed marble-sized balls of clay in the eye sockets, then flattened small coils for eyelids. As her eyes started to take shape, I struggled to look at the three-dimensional representation of someone I had loved, still loved, and had lost. I placed a flattened coil over the eyeballs, closing her eyes, and scored the clay on the outside corners, adding a few laughter lines. The corners of her mouth lifted in a smile. Her sculpted face read contentment, a place she had struggled to find in life. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Malin. Beautiful. I would like to invite now Laura Hine to come and read from her piece, High Water and the Biggest Bear. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Cami. This piece takes place early in my third summer as the only female backpacking ranger in Yosemite National Park in 1975. My new backcountry manager, Mac, had sent me on a 3-day backpacking trip through the Grand Canyon of the Tuolumne River to assess trail conditions and confirm rumors of a washed out bridge. I rounded a bend and halted. 2 feet of water submerged the plank bridge spanning the chasm of Return Creek. White froth plunged over a precipice 50 feet below the bridge. My only recourse was upstream. Scrambling over boulders and brush, I found a log sloping steeply upward toward the opposite bank. I loosened my backpack's belly band and hoisted my seat over branch stubs. When I reached a perch midstream, while catching my breath, I assessed my situation. If this bridge was under so much water, how would other stream crossings be? I had no way of knowing what the trail conditions ahead were. I was the one reporting conditions. If I wimped out and retreated, what would my prospects be for the rest of the summer? For the ranger career I had set my heart on, would giving up now justify Mac's claim that this woman, or any woman, was not capable of doing the men's work of patrolling the backcountry? Failure stared me in the face. I belted out my pent-up frustration at my current effort, at Mac's distrust, at being unable to reach anyone on the radio, at the need to prove myself over and over. Hunched on my mossy perch, I hollered across the noisy stream that drowned out my screams of futility. Then I pushed forward. On a promontory above Muir Gorge, I found a spot to transmit. Dispatch responded. A bear broke into your White Wolf tent cabin. You're to return ASAP, before reception vanished. Although the transmission was fuzzy above the roaring surge of water hundreds of feet below, the information was clear. At halfway between my start at Tuolumne Meadows and the ranger camp where a bear had broken into my home base, the known return to White Wolf would require retracing my steps and finding a ride. But then Mac might doubt my ability to complete the route. The best way was forward, through the canyon, into the unknown, with no radio reception. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, Laura. So we know you made it out okay, but I just love the tension in that. So next, our reader is Lisa Joya Akers, and she's reading from My Exotic Life. Lisa Joya, or as we call her, Lisa G.
Thank you, Cami. Am I showing? Okay, thanks.
You're good.
This is a chapter excerpt from my memoir, The Blue Suitcase. As a young girl, I'd watched the movie Born Free, the story of George and Joy Adamson living in Africa and raising an orphaned lion cub. As an orphan myself, perhaps the story touched something deep inside of me, drawing me to animals, making them my friends. As a lonely child, I'd surrounded myself with pets. My dream was to live among wild animals in their natural habitat, yet I didn't know how to realize this dream. It was 1976, and I sat waiting to speak with a college advisor wanting to know what my future would hold. In the waiting room, I picked up a copy of People magazine. Flipping through it, I landed on an image of a man and a lion alongside a story about a California college program called Exotic Animal Training and Management. It was as if the universe was sending me a sign. I left without meeting with the advisor and hastily wrote a letter to Moorpark College requesting an application. Not long after I received word that I'd been invited for an interview. On the plane to Los Angeles, I silently told myself, this is my dream, it has to come true. 1 month later, a letter arrived congratulating and welcoming me into the Exotic Animal Training and Management program. 60 people had been selected out of nearly 600 applicants, and I was one of them. That spring, I moved from my small rural town in Western New York to Southern California before the school year started. I fervently hoped this experience would allow me to become like my idol, the famous primatologist Jane Goodall. As a student, the mental and physical demands were the hardest challenges I'd ever faced, not to mention the reality of what it takes to care for exotic animals. Yet I persevered because I was surrounded by lions, monkeys, camels, and other animals I'd only ever dreamed of working with. Those 2 years were filled with life lessons I still rely on today. For example, when I gave birth to my 2 children, I relied on my observations of mammal mothers to know how to care for my mammal babies. What I learned as a student in this unique and amazing program has enriched my life beyond anything a naive girl from a small town could have imagined. The universe, the animal program, and my own determination to follow a dream made it happen. I wouldn't change a thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I hope all of you who are here in support of our readers can really hear the quality of the work here and go pick up the anthology and continue to give accolades to your friends and family members that you're here to support. As I said, this was a lot of work to pare their pieces down to the really punchy chapters that are in the anthology. Our next reader is Kelly Holt, who appears in the anthology under K.O. Holt. And Kelly will be reading from Love to Lean On. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks, Cami. As I planted red gardenias before the rock, my father's homemade gravestone, his neighbor John approached. I recognize you from the picture on your dad's mantle. And when I asked him who the young lady was, he snapped, "What are you, writing a book?" I laughed softly. I could just hear my dad saying that, but the words cut. Like me, I knew my father had been devastated by our 17 years apart and wondered what thoughts and feelings he may have washed away with vodka, or on a good day, a Budweiser. I wanted to add that I was the one writing the book, or was hoping to. John graciously excused himself, and I continued to pack cool dirt around the flowers until a tiny voice peeped. "Hi, did you know Mr. H?" I whipped my head to the side and forced a smile. 2 young red-headed fillies, as my dad would surely have called them, stood grinning. John's kids. "Yes, I did," I replied, trying to match the sprightly tone of whichever one asked. "He's my father." The young one flashed a missing tooth. "He was nice. I miss him." Staring at me in wide-eyed wonder, she noticed my flowers and reached for a handful of dandelions. "I miss him too," I sighed, as she came to the rock, flung open her small hand, and let her floral tribute fall next to mine. My eyes welled, remembering the joy my brothers and I brought to our dad as kids, and I wondered how much these 2 fiery characters next door might have given him as well. "Hey, let's give Miss Kelly some privacy," John called his girls home. Alone, I knelt to the rock and put my arm around its shoulder. Like old friends, we looked upon my dad's house, so still and calm, despite the horror that happened there a year ago, when my father decided to take his own life. How could such peaceful silence come from such pain? How could this be the way the story goes? I thought we had more time. A 727 flew overhead, and I imagined my father at the helm, dressed proudly in his captain's uniform. I stood and watched, until the plane was out of sight and the contrails faded to nothing. My throat muscles tightened and ached with feelings that had no words, and words that I could not speak and would never have the chance to again. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Nice work. Our next reader is Johanna Catherine, reading from Aisha and the Matrix. Johanna, welcome.
I land in Morocco as my marriage is unraveling, more quickly and painfully than I ever could have imagined. Even as I boarded the plane, I believed I was just creating space to let my partner cool down and come to his senses. Our relationship, previously egalitarian and caring, had become lonely and arid. I thought he was depressed. He was distant and uncommunicative, and the more I talked and tried to help us work on us, the angrier he became. As his behavior became controlling and aggressive, I grew afraid. I begged him to do therapy, but he didn't want to talk to a stranger about his problems, our problems. I knew that without help, we weren't going to make it. He didn't believe in therapy, he told me, at least not for him. Which is ironic, because I am a therapist. Before I got on that plane, we had been living in Mongolia, a country not our own. With a good internet connection, I could see clients from anywhere, so I crammed a suitcase full of clothes and family photos and made my way to Morocco, a country both familiar and exotic. I hope God knocks some sense into your head while you're fasting this year, I had told him during one of our last arguments. But Ramadan was just around the corner, and he took seriously the injunction to fast. I'm sure I sounded insensitive. As much as my words insulted him, I hadn't intended to mock his religion. I genuinely hoped he could be spiritually broken open during this year's fast, that the divine would step in where my attempts to reach him had failed. But my attempt to manage the hand of God hasn't ended well. Now I'm free-floating in the universe without a home and without family close by. I am bereft. You should be around people, my therapist said. So I rent a room in a co-living space in Essaouira, a seaside city on the Atlantic coast of Morocco. The city awakes to a chilly mist in the mornings, and I jog through Byzantine cobblestone streets that spit me out onto the beach, where I lose myself running through sand and fog. I see clients virtually from my room in the communal stone house overlooking a courtyard filled with construction, street noise, and stray cats, then write my clinical notes from the coffee shop downstairs. The other digital nomads supplied just enough human contact to avoid shriveling away in my own head. Grief is my constant companion. I wear it like a felt cloak, muffling me to the outside world. Often I wish for Harry Potter's cloak of invisibility, so I could go to restaurants without engaging in social niceties. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing here in this tourist town, where the women of Instagram pose against the city walls. I have nothing to do with the couples gazing longingly at each other across the tables. I used to be half of one of those couples. The skin hunger is tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johanna. Nice work. Our next reader is Geraldine Cochran, reading from her piece entitled Storm. Welcome, Geraldine.
Thank you, Cami. This is an excerpt from my memoir, Where Do I Begin? In 2020, my mother's nursing home is caught up in one of the first waves of COVID. It's Easter weekend. Cold west winds howl. It's Mom's 86th birthday. My daughter Jamie and I take flowers to the home, along with the stuffed teddy bear Mom gave her long ago. We request that these be placed by her bedside, hoping they offer some small comfort or connection to distant memories of gardens and grandchildren. The doctor calls. Mom had a rough time yesterday. They've suctioned her lungs. Her temperature is 104. Later that afternoon, she's given scopolamine. Google tells me this keeps her from drowning in her own fluids. She is truly trapped now in the sinking ship of COVID and Alzheimer's, yellow flag waving. It is not a Good Friday. Mom, along with so many others, is on a one-way journey. They tell me that with pre-screening, full PPE, then 2 weeks of self-isolation, I can visit her. The grim progression of statistics suggests otherwise. So now she's doubly isolated. And I am at a loss. What can I do? Her destiny is certain, yet I dare not close the short distance between us. I reach out to my dear friend Diallo, who practices one of the African healing wisdoms. We talk of the tenuous, tempestuous relationship that raged and cooled between my mother and me, and later between her and my daughter. Diallo helps me create a compassionate ritual for seeing Mom through this. That night, Jamie and I light a candle, speaking aloud fond memories of our mother and grandmother. Hello Kitty blankets and somewhere over the rainbow tucked in the tail of the rabbit she knit. Dolls eaten wet and purple on the sandy sliver of the Atlantic. Banana breads and Oh Susanna on the harmonica. Peppermints and homemade two-piece swimsuits. Crocheted couch throws and cutthroat Scrabble. Multitudes of mittens and hats. Halloween bats with pipe cleaner claws and lemon loaves with crystal tart tops. Sweet velvet throats of purple bearded irises and Je me souviens for two birds with one stone French poem. May she know that she is not alone, that our differences do not outweigh our kinship, and that she is traveling in love. Thank you.
Good work, Geraldine. Thank you so much. I'll take a breath. I would like to now invite Jean Wells to come and read from her piece, Unfinished Business. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you, Cami. My piece is from my memoir in progress, titled Generations of Secrets. Mother died Tuesday. I glanced at my phone and read the 3 words I just received from my estranged sister, Deanna. My sister's message and the fact that it came from her not only landed as a shock, it reverberated through my whole body. My tears were the most shocking part of all. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. I'd been through years of therapy, thinking I dealt with the estrangement from my family, including my mother. I'd rocked the boat and found a comfortable, peaceful way to bob along without the family negativity and drama. I wondered if I was wrong to have believed that someday my mother and I would reconcile. Any hope of that happening was now lost. Unfinished business, I told myself. I tried to open that door for my mother and me to have one last conversation about the terrible secret of my father's incest. Daddy had made me keep that promise for more than 20 years. But the heart-to-heart with my mother never came. When I broached the subject, my father, he admitted what he had done was wrong and apologized. To my knowledge, though, he never shared that conversation with my mother. Now I would have to live with the regret of that unfinished business. I spoke to my other estranged sister, Debbie, by phone prior to the funeral service. When I told Debbie that our mother had told me that she didn't love me and never had, Debbie said, "It's okay." She told me the same thing and Jimmy too. She didn't love any of us. Debbie said the puppet strings had been cut. Mother was the puppet master and controlled all 4 of us. She was very good at manipulating. But now that the strings have been cut, she can't hurt any of us anymore. What I hadn't expected to gain from my mother's death, however, was a chance to explore common ground with 2 of my 3 estranged siblings. Words can't express how thankful I am to have my sister and brother back in my life. Despite my unfinished business with my mother, I now have a loving relationship with two of my siblings that I hope and believe will last until the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. I think everyone here can appreciate how much work it takes to be able to articulate some of these stories and then to be able to read them out loud. So thank you all for giving each other love in the chat. It's really important. Our next reader is Katron Lee McMillian, and Katron will be reading from her piece entitled A Special Kind of Love, My Beloved Grandparents and I. Katron, welcome.
Can you see me?
Yep, got you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. You'll learn that my family is extremely important to me as whenever I finish this memoir, but my goal is for next year. At any rate, I have had the fortune of being raised only by both my parents and both sets of grandparents, my maternal grandparents, Mama Dora and Daddy Johnson, and my paternal grandparents, Granddaddy and Grandma. When I was growing up in Chicago, my two siblings and I could visit all four of them frequently. We were very fortunate to have both sets of grandparents available. In 1960, when I was 5 years old, Daddy Johnson had promised to teach me how to ride my mint green, shiny, new two-wheel bicycle. It was a quiet yet sweltering Saturday morning. I hopped out of bed full of joy and merriment as this was to be the first big day. I sang cheerfully as I dressed. Although I could not carry a tune in a bucket, I decided it was fitting for me to sing that old Negro spiritual, if I could help somebody, my living would not be in vain. Daddy Johnson was a living testament to this principle, that a good life meant doing good for others. It was a lesson I absorbed readily, even as a child. Daddy Johnson was already outside waiting for me. The bicycle was propped up on the black kickstand. I mounted my bike as Daddy Johnson placed his hands firmly on the rear of the seat. I pedaled with all my might as he ran behind me. I was laughing, enjoying the wind in my face. After a few times of being held onto, I glided up and down the street. I began to feel secure and sure of my ability to ride. I said to Daddy Johnson, "Let me go. I can do it by myself." I didn't realize he had already let me go. My bicycle and I continued to zoom up and down Wallace Street in front of my grandparents' home. All of a sudden, I couldn't hear Daddy Johnson talking to me anymore, so I turned around, only to find him far away watching me with a big smile. He was standing halfway down the block by the chain link fence in front of the gate. I was not looking where I was going, but rather at his crisp mahogany skin glistening in the sun. Through his verbose laughter, his bright white teeth were beaming. One Sunday in 1961, during regular church service, I started crying to beat the band during church service. I was only 6 years old, and my grandfather stopped in the middle of his sermon. "My baby is crying," he announced to the entire congregation, "and I need to find out why." One of the ushers, Miss Nettie, had moved me to a pew away from my siblings and first cousins who sat together every single Sunday, often listening with added talking and snickering, teaching each other sign language and whatever else we could get into that didn't have to do with church. I grew up believing that my grandparents would always be there for me and that nothing happened to them. Much to my surprise, I would soon learn the dark side of this special kind of love, that it could be snatched away from our lives just like that without a moment's notice. If you would like to know more about my story, you have to buy the anthology or my memoir. Thank you so much.
Good work on the marketing there at the end there too, Katron. Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. All right. Our next, second to last reader is going to be Cheryl Ochterberg, and she will be reading from her piece, which is entitled Snakes. Cheryl, welcome.
Hello. This scene is actually one from my undergraduate experience in 1972. One day we went in and the instructor wore a somber expression. "You all need to keep your eyes open today," he told us. "The department's boa constrictor escaped from its cage last night. He hasn't been found yet, and he must be in here somewhere." Immediately, everyone's legs shot up off the floor and we began scanning underneath our seats. We knew our professor wasn't joking. He looked scared himself, but he went on with his lecture. I don't think any of us paid much attention until, boom, we heard a colossal crash. Every single student rose and ran out as fast as humanly possible. We hovered just outside the classroom, peering in through the top of the Dutch door to see what had happened. One glance inside gave the source of the crash away. A massive beige snake with big brown splotches was writhing along the floor between two rows of student seats. It had been sunning in the window, stretched out on the Venetian blinds, until the force of its weight apparently pulled the whole contraption off the wall. No one made a move to recapture the creature. The professor took off down the hall, presumably to get help. The rest of us tiptoed away from the door and began huddling in small groups. "Who'll make the grab?" someone suddenly asked. That's when everyone morphed into an expert. I'm a botanist. I'm pre-med. I'm an oceanographer. I'm a hematologist. I remained silent. I was pre-vet, but there was no way I was going in there to wrestle with a giant snake. We might all have been biology majors, but no one claimed to be a herpetologist or reptile specialist. We stayed where we were, and the snake got left alone. Magically, our trusty janitor appeared before us. He looked in over the door and without so much as a shrug, opened it, walked right in, grabbed the monster and lugged it toward the rear of the room, laboriously lifting coil after coil to stuff the snake back into its tank. The professor reappeared shortly afterward, and we all re-entered, stepped over the broken blinds, and sat down in our seats. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Oh my goodness, a snake, nothing like a snake story. I really appreciate everyone's energy and effort in like presenting in the readings. I love the voices that are coming for the characters. The hematologist there cracked me up. So our final reader is Carol Chapman. Carol is going to be reading from her piece, The Hairy Companion. Carol, welcome.
Thank you. One early November morning, my friend Dorothy sent me a picture of a purebred Pembroke Welsh Corgi puppy someone had surrendered to the local Humane Society for adoption. One look at the 5-month-old named Duke, and I reached for my phone to call for an appointment to see this adorable specimen. I zipped right over to the Humane Society at the appointed time to view him up close. Sitting on the concrete floor, I waited for him to be brought into the small Spartan visiting room. A window beside the door showed the hallway and reception desk. When a young man finally led Duke down the hall and into the room, the puppy let me pet him. But he didn't show much interest in me. His perked ears signaled his curiosity, which centered on the goings-on in the hallway. He spent most of our visit standing on his hind legs, looking through the window. Nevertheless, I liked his dark tan coat and the white fur encircling his neck like a wreath. A white ring surrounded his nose, leading upward in a line toward a spot between his curious eyes. The lighter tan fur pants he wore on his little round behind was one of the most enticing things about him. All four of his white legs looked longer than they actually were. Not feeling fully grown at 5 months, I knew this corgi would fill out considerably, although he might not gain much in height. He looked average in size at 12 inches from the floor to the top of his shoulders. He was another corgi, in many ways a typical corgi, and I wanted him. It took a day before the Humane Society's director called to tell me the pup would be mine. Are you sure? There might be a better home for him, I said, pretending to myself that this corgi and I weren't really meant to be. A place with cows to herd and acres to explore. We don't think so. You'll give him a great home, he said. I felt my heart flutter momentarily. Getting another dog was still a big decision. Did I want another corgi? No, perhaps not. But for some reason, my desire for a smaller, gentle female puppy, a lap dog, disappeared from my mind. Maybe he won't like me, I wondered. Maybe I won't like him once I get him home. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. From snakes to puppy dogs. And I have a feeling we know what happened, but I really encourage everyone to purchase the anthology and celebrate all of these authors and all of the work that they've done. So once again, I just want to thank all of you. This is a huge accomplishment for these authors. It really takes more than you can imagine to get a piece together of 3,000 words that hangs together and has emotion and detail. And so just really want to celebrate everybody here. If you want to purchase the book, there throughout the feed, I don't know, Amanda, maybe you can pop in the links one more time. Of course, you can get it on Amazon and you can get it directly from Ingram. And authors, for those of you who are here and want to celebrate with us, we're going to have an after party. So if you read tonight, or if you were in the anthology but you didn't read and you want to join us, we're going to take about a 10-minute break and then jump back on this same link and toast each other, go get some bubbly. Fans and friends, have a wonderful rest of your day. You can all unmute yourselves if you would like to and just give a big shout out to everyone. So everyone go ahead and unmute yourselves and just give it a good congratulations.
Congratulations, everybody.
You all rock. You're awesome. Good job.